Hi everyone, welcome to another live learning session with us here at SmithOS. I'm Shell, and today we're diving into the LLM Assistant component. Okay, so the LLM Assistant component is part of our advanced component library together with the call API, JSON filter for each and other components that you can see here. Okay, so this component is designed to handle chat conversation. So it makes it easier and super useful if you want your agent to track and remember the flow of conversations. Okay. So to make your LLM assistant works its magic, you first need to set up some few key configurations here. Alright, so the first one is the model. So this is crucial because the model guides how the conversation is handled. So by default, we're using OpenAI models. If you've watched my other live learning session, I've talked about it. So we're using GPT models, as you can see on the drop down here. Then if you prefer, alright, SmithOS lets you switch to other models from Claude AI, Together AI. We just recently added in our library integration with the Gemini models from Google. So you can unlock those models if you bring your own key. Alright, just bring your key and add them to your vault, and yeah, you should be able to see them added here in your model drop down. Then let's select a model, let's say GPT-4 Turbo here. So after selecting, you will see the this information here about the model of your choosing. So who the provider is, the current context window size, and the maximum output token. So context window size and maximum output tokens will depend on your API key. Again, currently we're using the free API key that SmithOS provides users. But if you want to have more context window size or unlock your context window size and have more output tokens to use, you need to bring your own OpenAI key. Alright, and as I've said earlier, just go to the vault and add it there. Alright, now next is the behavior. Once you've set up or you've selected your model, the next is you need to set up or you need to tweak the behavior of your LLM assistant. Okay, so this field here is where you set how you want your LLM assistant to act or to behave when interacting with, let's say, users. So you can input specific behaviors here, but by default, we already provide this very basic behavior. All right. So, okay. Now that we've set this to settings here, let's just save this, and then let's discuss the input parameters. Okay, so you can see here that we have the user ID and conversation ID. So by default, these two inputs are optional. They help uniquely identify a conversation. So you can use one or both together. But again, just make sure that the input that you pass to this parameters or variables are always unique to a conversation, okay, or a thread. And another thing to note is that the LLM assistant's capacity, to remember previous conversation in a session is limited by the LLM model's context window size. This one here. Okay, so if you're using a model with a small context window size, it has less room. Your LLM Assistant component has less room to look back into past conversations because it has less token to use. On the other hand, if you're using an LLM model with, bigger context window, the LLM Assistant will have more tokens to spend and can look further into the previous conversations. All right. Then we have here the user input. So this is a required input parameter because this is where the input from the user will go to. All right. Let's save this, and then we have here, of course, the output, which we call the response. Any response or any response generated by the LLM Assistant will go here. All right. Now let's set some example. Okay. So again, you can use either the user ID or the conversation ID to tag your conversation. Okay, but by default, they are optional. So let me just set a let's just add a unique identifier by default to the conversation ID. Okay, so by default, I'm gonna add this. Okay, so it will remember our conversation. I'm gonna do debug. Then ignore this. And I'm gonna hi. Okay, you'll see that the response is this. Now I'm gonna ask it to remember my name. Okay, so now I gave it its first command. I'm gonna try to open another LLM Assistant here. Let me, okay, turbo latest. Alright. Then in the conversation ID, I'm gonna add the same conversation tag. Let's see if it will remember me. There you go. Okay, so that's your LLM Assistant. So again, in a session, it will remember your previous conversation because as long as you provide it with a conversation ID or a user ID. Again, we use this to tag the conversations, and the LLM Assistant can then use those tags to look back into previous conversation. Alright, so that's your LLM Assistant. I have here a demo agent, a very simple agent that I created with just one endpoint and an LLM Assistant here. Now, I have here a very detailed instruction for this LLM Assistant. So, I wanted to start introducing itself first before asking for my name. I provided an example. Then other instruction here together with example. So it knows how to respond to user inquiries. Okay. Now I want this LLM Assistant to act as a science assistant. So it should be able to answer any questions related to science. Alright, so that's the instruction. And now, if you want to make sure that your agent will only call onto this API endpoint and not generate its own response. So one thing that users need to remember is that this chat embodiment uses a different set of LLM model, right? A different LLM model. So unless you specifically ask it not to interpret responses or, do not answer user questions on its own, it will answer it as long as it deemed that it's not necessary to call on any API endpoint. It will try to answer any inquiries that users have. So to make sure that it only generates the response from the LLM assistant from this endpoint here, you need to add a specific instruction for it on the behavior, on the agent settings behavior. You can instruct it like this to always call. For instance, in this example, I instructed it to always call the response API endpoint for every interaction, whether it is a question or a statement. It should return the response from the endpoint exactly as it received it, without any alterations or interpretation. So that's the instruction. Okay, now let's just, so I already added a conversation, and let's say I'm gonna do this. Alright, now I'm gonna interact with it. Okay, so even without the debug mode enabled, you will know if your agent is calling onto an API endpoint because of this. Alright, so this is only shown on staging environment, but once you deploy your agent, the end users, your customers, whoever it is that will get in touch with your agent on in production, won't see this anymore. Alright, so it called onto the response endpoint, and then this is the response from the LLM assistant, as you can see. So it says, "Hi there, I'm Smith, your friendly science companion. May I know your name?" So you know that the agent is not interpreting the response from the LLM assistant and creating its own or recreating it. Alright, so I'm gonna say, "Hi, I'm Shell." Okay, so now this agent or this LLM assistant should remember me as Shell because I gave it my name, and at the same time it is now included in the history of this particular conversation. Now, if you want to deploy this to production, you need to set up a process where you generate the conversation ID or the user ID for every interaction. Alright, so this is just an example. What is an echo? Let's ask it, what is an ecosystem? Okay. Now, if you look at the response from the LLM assistant, it's providing the response. This agent relies on the LLM assistant to provide the response. Okay, and yeah, that's how you set up your LLM assistant, and this is just one use case. If you've seen our agent templates, let's go to the agent templates. one use of the LLM Assistant is shown on the bidirectional messaging agent. Okay, so this agent is integrated with Twilio. So what it does is it generates response to text messages received via Twilio. Okay, so this LLM Assistant has a very simple behavior, again, that users can tweak if they use this template. And then it sends that response to the sender via Twilio. So as you can see, we only have one endpoint here. This endpoint takes care of the receiving and sending of messages. But as you can see, at the heart of this agent is the LLM Assistant. Alright, the one who processes the message that's been received and the one that generates the response. So this doesn't require user interaction on the back end. Once this is deployed, the LLM Assistant will take care of the conversation. Alright, so as long as it receives a message, it uses as a user ID to remember conversations or to tag conversations. It uses the phone number from the recipient, alright, to tag the conversation, and later on look into the history of that conversation for context. Okay, and yeah, that's it. That's the LLM Assistant. If you have more questions, again, if you have a use case in mind that you need help with, that you think could be solved by using an LLM Assistant, and you need help implementing that, just message us on Discord or email us. Okay, I hope this helps. See you in our next live learning session. Bye.